Welcome to Junkyard Theory, folks. Tonight's episode is one that has been months in the making, and this is probably the biggest episode in terms of the number of people I've had on a single episode ever. And I have five people here, probably going to be six. But the most amazing thing is this is the cast and crew from the third episode of the second season of Little America, the first episode or anything on television to depict a Sri Lankan immigrant family story, anything related to Sri Lanka on American national TV. And I have the cast of Little America here. Everybody, thank you so much for coming on board. Bernie, alumni status 5 stars. I'm going to induct you into the Junkyard Theory Hall of Fame one of these days. We got Anuradha, Isuri Wijesundara, Thushari, and of course our casting director Keertana Sastry. Welcome, guys. Ayubowan and Namaste.
Ayubowan.
Namaste.
Guys, first of all, congrats on such an amazing episode. Like being in Sri Lanka, being Sri Lankan, seeing an episode like this for the first time, it gave me all the right feels for all the right reasons. Being a Sri Lankan, seeing Sri Lankan immigrant families portrayed the way that they were so accurately, from everything to the family behaviors, mannerisms, the dynamics, like what people take away from their motherland and take it all the way out there to the West and how they function. All those dynamics are portrayed amazingly well. And being a Sri Lankan, I loved watching this because we very rarely get Sri Lankan representation on American television, American media at all, in any media, actually. I mean, you ask people to point out where Sri Lanka is on a map, and they're like, is that a part of India? Yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone's had that question asked from them like at least once. But this, I think, took it's placing Sri Lanka on the map, and there's a lot of people that we got to be thankful for. But before we get in that, I wanna go right into it. Keertana, would you like to start and talk to us about how this episode came to be?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to note that the show is run by two amazing filmmakers and artists, Lee Eisenberg and Sean Heater, who are just incredible talents on their own. Sean, people may know, directed a film called Coda that won Best Picture, not last year. Yeah, last year. So clearly, like, very talented people, and the show was also born, if you will, because of Kumail Nanjiani and Emily Gordon. So, coming on to the project with the team that I work with in casting, it was very exciting because it is a show that's all about real people and real stories, and depicting those stories as authentically as possible. So, that comes with its challenges, but it also comes with really high rewards because we get to be, I get to brag and say, like, we get to be as authentic as humanly possible on TV, which is not always the case. So, when we signed on, we got this episode, like one of the first things that we did was make sure that we had conversations with our cultural consultant, who hopefully will join us later today, and make sure that just going into the casting process that we're doing it right. And then you start a search, basically. I mean, the first thing we knew we had to do was find Isuri to find our lead, and we were so excited that we found Isuri. But it's basically a search. You basically go in, make sure that you are finding people who, it's hard in casting. We can't really say, like, in descriptions and things, that we need to have someone who is X, Y, and Z ethnicity. We need to have X, Y, and Z, nationality, because that's we have equal employment opportunity in this country, and so you have to just be very careful about how you say certain things, which is I think a really great thing, because it all, at the end of the day, because it gives people an opportunity to play any kind of parts that they want to play, which is important. But obviously, for something, when you're looking for something super authentic, you have to make sure that you find people who can speak the language, who know the cultures, know the customs. And so, we did a search, basically, and Isuri fell into our laps, and we were thrilled, because she's amazing, and I'm very excited for when she starts talking. But we got her tape, and we were like, wow, she's so great. And then we got to have her on a Zoom callback with our team,
which was crazy.
Which I'm sure was very overwhelming. But it was pretty clear by the time she logged off. We were like, that is a special talent. And it was kind of a no-brainer at that point. But and then, it's so funny. I just met Bernie in person last night for the first time at an event that we both happened to be at. And he, for our team at least, he was like number one of like, can we get Bernie White to do this? Because it would just be such a treat and a privilege for him to do this. And he agreed, and he was busy on another show, and we got him on a Zoom, and we were talking to him, and he was excited to do it. We were like, yes, this is the greatest moment ever. So, it was, and we were able to work it out with the other show, and thank God, because I don't think that this episode would be the same without a very special talent like Bernie White. I was also saying before we started recording, I also got to be on a Zoom and do the audition with Thushari, which was such a treat, because Thushari comes in with just like the best energy in the world. It's always about like positivity and support, and like, let's just have fun. And so the moment we got on the Zoom and we started like reading with each other and talking, it was just like, it's just joy. It just like radiates off the Zoom. So, again, it was another situation where I was like, yeah, everything started coming into place really, really easily, especially once like Isuri and Bernie were on board. Like, everything started coming into place so easily. But this is a process where, again, it's one of the first times where we actually have the opportunity to sit down and say, okay, are we being authentic? Are we being real? Are we dedicating ourselves to the real story here, and making sure that we're doing that justice? Because that's the important thing, is making sure we're doing that justice. So, and that's not always a situation when you're in the casting process. You kind of just have to just cast people and go. But this is a very special opportunity that we got to have.
That's amazing. And we have Nayomi in the waiting room, and I think I'm gonna have to pop somebody out in order to add Nayomi onto the room. So can I pop out?
I'll pop out.
Anuradha, do you want to pop out?
Yeah,
okay.
And then just log back in?
No, I'm gonna put you onto the waiting room. You'll be here on the call. I'll switch you back in. All right. Welcome, Nayomi. Hi.
Hello. Hi.
Take your hair out. Ooh.
Very short.
So nice to have you on the show.
Thank you.
You look beautiful.
Thank you, Bernie. It's lovely to see everyone.
Okay, while you're talking, while Naomi's introduced herself, I'm just going to go get a visual aid. 1 second.
Nayomi, we would love to hear about your contributions to the project, because like I was telling everybody before, being a Sri Lankan, living in Sri Lanka, this was a pretty spot on, accurate representation of a Sri Lankan family. Like done so well. Everything was done so well. And oh, there we go. Bernie's holding up the books.
If you don't know her writing, Akash, you are in for a treat. She's probably one of the most important writers out of Sri Lanka in a very long time.
Oh,
100%. And I'm so looking forward to reading your work. But Naomi, please tell us how your contributions to the show. How did this thing come about for you?
yeah. Well, they hired me as cultural consultant. So
Mhm.
my job was to work closely with Hinge, who is the director, to make sure that it was specifically Sri Lankan, right? So what this meant was saying no Bollywood dancers, no to many different pieces, no to parathas, no, we're gonna have coconut roti, things that you guys who were doing the actions might not even have known, but like all of those pieces were just like me and Tinge being like, that's not how it works. And having long discussions. As you might know, I'm a novelist, write about Sri Lanka, diaspora, war, immigration, misogyny, many different things. And they just contacted me and said, we need a cultural consultant. I'm really thrilled.
Uh-oh.
Wait, did you? Oh,
Can you guys hear me?
Now we can.
yeah.
Okay, cool. So I was just really thrilled when I got the email that was like, will you work on this show? Hell yeah, I'll work on a show about Sri Lankans in America. Are you kidding? I've been waiting for a very long time to get that kind of call, right? As I think all of us. And what it meant was going through the script pretty meticulously and looking at places where they hadn't got it right. It was a very good script. But you know, you have to be Sri Lankan, right? Like to get the nuances. And the, you know, we pushed, Tinge and I fought for many things to make it specifically Sri Lankan. And we knew it was so important because it's the first time. I don't know anything else that had Sri Lankans in it. Yeah.
It is the very first time. And could you talk to us a little bit about some of the nuances besides the food that you ended up changing from, like, you know, what was in the script?
My job,
I mean,
Naomi, my character,
yes.
what I did for a living.
Yes. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up because I wasn't sure if I should talk about that. But they originally had him as a musician.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, me and Tinge were like, no, that doesn't feel right for this guy who has come from Sri Lanka to America. He's got to be a doctor or an engineer. And we really pushed for engineer. And then I sent Bernie to go and hang out with my dad, who's a civil engineer.
The best. Oh, it's the best. He
And
showed
my
me
dad-
the bridges he had built.
Yeah. So my dad worked in Los Angeles with the county and built bridges for 30 years. Went from Sri Lanka, went from Peradeniya, you know, was part of that generation that was, you know, schooled so well in Sri Lanka and then left for kind of obvious reasons. And I was like, this guy it's just so, it makes so much more sense if he's a professional of that kind, right? It doesn't make sense for him to be a musician. And so many more immigrants, Sri Lankan immigrants will connect with that engineer character. It's just so much more universal. And I'm
Definitely. So
Mhm.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. No, you go.
What I wanted to say was that it made Bernie struggle later on so much more. It hit you harder because, you know, as an engineer in Sri Lanka, it's easy for you to survive if you're here. But going all the way over to the States and the struggle that he goes through, like the luxuries he enjoyed while he was in the country over here, he can't provide that. He can't enjoy the same things, and there are sacrifices that have to be made. It made a whole lot more sense to have an engineer rather than a musician. So I think that was a really good call.
I fought her on it too. Initially I was saying, oh no, let's make him a musician because it's not a cliche, and but it was so much better, and it afforded that beautiful scene on the bridge, you know, and to talk, and it was it was just like artistically, it was so much a richer choice, deeper. It was like, and made him like, my big fear was I too Hollywood? Like I thought, oh, I'm just a stupid actor, and like they should have like, you know, I saw Aziz Ansari at this event Keertana and I were at last night, and Aziz, I was up to play his father in his show, and I went up to him and I said, "You were so smart to not cast me and cast your real father." He was just so much better than I could have ever been. Like, it's like you have to, like, I have to unlearn Hollywood, you know, to be authentic. And so, you know, the jury's out whether I accomplish that or not. But anyway, that's
Brittany, I think you definitely did.
well, thank you. But yeah, and Nayomi fought for that. Like, I remember us saying, like, oh, I want the musician. I should be a musician, and that's closer to who I am. But it made it, you know, there's a negative word is there's a nerd quality to there's a, like, you know, someone who's bookish, you know, and that's another, and it's something that's devalued. You know, you're overlooked in America when you're that kind of a normal person, you know? So it was incredible, the choice. And then to meet her father and to see his pride in his bridges, and it's just so moving. This whole, I could dominate the entire time by just talking about how moving all this was, but I'm going to shut up right now.
I also want to say, like, the way Naomi approaches, hi Naomi, the way she approaches like sharing information about the culture and like making sure that we're educated. Because again, like, I'm South Indian, like, so I'm obviously not Sri Lankan. So even I also had to learn a lot on the casting side. But the way that Naomi shares information, it's so comes from a place of love and like passion and excitement, and it rubs off on you. And every time we would be on calls or Zooms with her, we'd be like, oh my god, we're so excited to do X, Y, and Z. Like, I mean, it's so easy to want to be real when you're talking to her, like, truly.
That's amazing, because what I feel is like the love for the project came across, like it was so visible on screen to someone who is from that particular culture. You can see people who adore the culture, not just Sri Lankan, but the whole South Asianness of it. It's visible because we have this thing, you know, if you are a doctor, engineer, lawyer, accountant, you're well off, or else you're a failure, whatever other career you choose. You know, it's kind of like a stigma. It's kind of like it's a cliche, and I think that's why, in a way, it works so well.
We have broken that cliche. I think
Exactly.
everybody has broken that cliche, so we're well aware that was the pressure for all of us to be those careers, and we didn't. We all went a very different way.
Yeah, and so that was very well done. And before I move on to actors, I want to just talk a little bit about the story. So this was written by Kumail. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And how did the Sri Lankan elements come in? Like, I mean, I know it was based on a true story. So did he like interact with the people on whom the story is based on, and include the Sri Lankan elements in there itself? Talk to me a bit about, if anyone knows how the screenplay came about, because it was at its core a father-daughter story, and that played out superbly, I thought. But mingling that with the South Asian culture was the cherry on top of the cake.
Isuri knows about the real woman, I think, so she could really tell us, I bet.
Yeah, I mean,
I feel like maybe Nayomi or Keertana could speak to this better than I can, but her name's Sri Jayasekara, and she did this whole thing. She was in Texas and she kissed a car and she won the car. And and I think the premise of the show, correct me if I'm wrong, is what is the magazine that it goes on? There's a magazine that does articles on these stories. So the showrunners pick the stories and base each episode on these stories that have actually happened to real people. And so the showrunners, lo and behold, decided to pick Delaney's story. And Kumail and Emily wrote the screenplay and was guided by Nayomi and Tinge to be able to get the story accurately to be as Sri Lankan as possible. But these were actual Sri Lankans who went through this real life story.
Stories based on Epic magazine, yeah?
That it is. That is the one.
Gotcha.
So that's
Amazing.
that's kind of how it came to be. I never met Delaney. Delaney reached out to me a couple of days before the episode came out because she had seen the final cut of it, and she found me on Instagram, and then she messaged me on Instagram. That's essentially how I got to know her, which for me as an actor was also kind of a relief, because to me it wasn't about playing Delaney, it was about being able to share the story of a Sri Lankan woman. And that felt more universal and something that everybody could relate to that way. And if you go on YouTube, I think you can see an interview of Delaney kissing the car. Either after she won it or while she was kissing the car, but within the 50 hours that she did the thing. So I watched that once actually before I hopped on that Zoom with 50,000 people in Keertana, just to make sure I knew what the story was. But I watched it once and I didn't watch it again because I wanted it to be our own story and the story that we came together to create and share. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. Thank you. And talking about the performances, I mean, Bernie and I, we've spoken at length on this about, again, like the lack of representation when it comes to South Asian characters, which is kind of changing now over there in the West, and that's so lovely to see people that you can actually relate to on screen. So I want to chuck this question out at all the actors. What was it like to finally, be there in the States and for the very first time in history, play roles that were designed specifically for Sri Lankans? Like, you didn't have to portray a separate other ethnicity or a nationality. What did this mean to you, and how did you guys approach it? Bunny, you want to start? Bunny, you're on mute.
Brittany, you're muted. In true dad fashion, you are muted.
What? What do you say? Where's the button? Where's the button actually? You see me? Okay. I was saying, let Thushari or Suri talk first.
Thushari, do you want to speak?
Sure, I'll go ahead first because I want you guys to speak more. I'll just do my. I just want to say I identified as a Sri Lankan American actress or a South Asian American actress to get the wider range of roles. I love acting, and so when I saw because I didn't know much about the story until I spoke with Keertana in Zoom. And I just knew that I wanted to be involved and make a contribution in any capacity. And I was saying that because we came to America because my mom's uncle, so in the mid 80s, my parents came, and then I grew up here. And I acted in some Sri Lankan community place in Los Angeles, and acting is my passion. And I was like, this is because my mom's uncle passed away in 2021, and then 2022 was this. And then as in honor of him, I wanted to be involved in any capacity. And I felt after I saw the script, it was like a heartfelt story. and then working with these phenomenal actors and crew, Isuri and Bernie, and there was Arya, the young Sachini, Satya. Some of them I didn't get to work with personally. And then Nayomi, like there was this farewell foods, and she's so passionate about being Sri Lankan, and it's and she also has that positive energy. And I was like, this is like that I'm glad that I chose, because it was after the end of like the lockdowns and people were getting productions back up, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it or not because of like the COVID requirements, and I got my vaccination just for this show. That's how excited I was. And then when I saw how committed everyone was, and seeing the personally getting to do the scenes, and working with Tinch, who told me just be, you don't need to do anything extra, like just be on the scenes. And I was happy that my heritage was being shown, and there's a story. And it like kind of another thing was because the production asked, like, because there's flashback scenes. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it. And they wanted some pictures to be in the house, because when we were back in Sri Lanka, they show, some of the pictures, and those were like from my parents and my grandparents, and they used that. And I was like feeling very, like a little bit, personally emotional, that they were trying to be authentic, and it was like awesome to be a part of it. And I'm very grateful and happy. So thank you for asking that question. And I'll now let it go to Bernie and Isuri.
Okay, I see the finger moving. I'll speak. I think I have the least experience in this room. I grew up in Sri Lanka.
Not true, me. I was.
Hi, welcome back.
Hi.
So I grew up in Sri Lanka. Up until I was 19. So I did my O-levels, A-levels, all that fun stuff back home. And then I moved to New York for my bachelor's. And I got my bachelor's in acting, and acting was something that I've always wanted to do. It took a minute for me to kind of break it down and realize for myself that acting is what I wanted to do. I have very supportive parents, which I'm very grateful for. And they always supported my artistic sides when I was growing up. And at one point I was like, maybe I want to be a therapist. Maybe I wanted to be a music therapist, to qualify the fact that I wanted to be a performer with the scientific component of it. And my parents, they looked at me and they were like, who are you? Like, just go do the thing that you want to do. So very grateful. And I moved to New York, and this is now I'm going on 8.5 years of having moved to the US. And I've been on student visas the entire time, which means that I've essentially been going from school to schools. And now I'm in my master's program, which I'm graduating in 72 days. I know I have a countdown. And I remember there was.
From what school?
Oh God.
Yeah. What was that school? Isuri? What was it?
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
What?
It rhymes with kale. It rhymes with kale.
She's at Kale University.
At Kale University.
There.
But yeah, go figure. And this was the first time since moving to the US where I've actually seen a breakdown for something that was specifically written for Sri Lankans, or not even just a Sri Lankan character, but a story that was specifically portraying Sri Lankan families. I've been in plays where I've played the Indian woman or the umbrella South Asian woman, who is that? But I've never actually had the opportunity to play myself, which is also something that I think I spent the last 4 years in grad school trying to figure out how to just be myself and not have to put things on or take things off. I remember my last year still in Lanka before I moved to the US. There was, what was the show? It was with Bradley Cooper. There's a movie and a TV show, and it's about like taking a pill.
Limitless.
Thank you. There was I think it was the TV show version, not the movie. But there was specifically a Sri Lankan character, and he was playing this like terroristy version of a guy who was an IT genius who had all the information and who was the threat to everything that was happening. And so fast forward to they show you this guy. He speaks in this like vague Tamil South Asian accent. There's nothing specific to the fact that he is Sri Lankan. The only thing that we know about him being Sri Lankan is the fact that he was a threat, and someone mentioned it in a scene before. And there was no life to it. There was no. It was just useless. The fact that he could have been anybody from anywhere around the world from South Asian descent, and he didn't have to be Sri Lankan. And yet again was portraying your, like terroristy, threaty brown person, which is a stereotype that we've seen portrayed on TV and film over and over again. And it really pissed me off. And that was before I moved to the US. And then I moved to the US and I was like, well, I mean, I guess one day maybe I'll be able to play myself. And lo and behold, this one day has come true, which I'm very grateful for. And it was such a relief being able to just be myself on screen, because the language and the story lended itself to that. It wasn't something where I had to like sit down and dissect with the script. I didn't have to like grab all of my colored pens and just kind of understand what the subtext of each word meant. It was just on the page, like everything was on the page, and it was in a way that my body understood how to showcase the story. And I didn't have to do all of the extra acting homework that you typically need to do if you're doing Shakespeare or Chekhov or literally anything else that's not written for our bodies. So yeah, I was very grateful to be able to do that. And there was the scene that I always talk about to everybody is the scene between Bernie and I, where we play opposite each other at the diner. And I didn't need to do anything. All I needed to do was hear Bernie speak in a Sri Lankan dialect, and it just hit me. Like the emotions just flew out of me, because it brought like all the conversations that I've had with my own father, all the conversations that I've had with all of my uncles, all of the male counterparts of my life. And I didn't need to manufacture a whole backstory to be able to source the emotion that was what you see on screen in that edit. But it was just being present with Bernie and receiving what Bernie was giving me, and us being able to just be ourselves with each other, which was such a gift, and such a rare experience. I feel like we're all going to have in our lifetimes. Take it away.
That's a fantastic answer. Thank you.
Anu, why doesn't Anu go first?
Oh, no, I think you should go. Okay, so my full name is Anuradha Seneviratne, like Isuri, and Seneviratne, but it's too long, so I go as Anuradha Senevi, and I'm fairly new to acting, probably 3 years in now, and but I've been here for like 16 years now. And interesting thing is, you don't see me in this episode, but Bernie was kind enough to get me in here because I got to know him there. I was playing an extra in one of the younger Sachinese scenes, eating with Bernie. And then, but I did actually read for Rehan, but I didn't get the part. So
this is the moment he puts me on blast.
Yeah, I got you, Keertana. But no, it's all good. And then I had such a great time. Oh my God! Like, I think my life would have been different if it wasn't for that episode, because I got to meet Bernie, and I think he's been such a guidance for me, and I was kind of lost. So that's the story.
Go team Wijesundara.
Yeah.
I was at this we with Keertana last night. We were at this. It's called South Asian Excellence in the Oscars, and I could talk forever about that. But I think Tanya Selvaratnam and I were the only two Sri Lankans at the whole event, and that's why Anu is such a wonderful actor. We saw how amazing Thushari and Isuri were. So it's just we don't know who Sri Lankans are yet, in this. And anyway, so this episode. So what was the question? The question is, how did we? I've been in this business for 40 years, I think, and this is the first time in 40 years, first time I got to play a Sri Lankan. And I can't, I just was watching a little of it just to remind myself of what this was. And I can't watch the show without sobbing. And, it speaks on so many levels of, I mean, seeing Isuri kissing that car, it's like almost like a kind of a metaphor of what we've all had to go through. Like, what do we have to do to fit in, to make it? And it's so deep. And seeing the people glaring in through the window, watching her. And then the self, like, we're such humble people, right? We're to a fault. Our country was invaded over and over again, and welcoming with open arms, the invaders. So in this deep way, this episode just like became such a metaphor, and I can't watch it without thinking of my parents' struggles and my parents, the story, the immigration story, and of sacrifice. And so I mean, I just will be completely inarticulate, because and to really depict what I felt about it is if I just break down sob for the rest of the time here, because it's just so moving, of the pain of the immigrant, and specifically Sri Lanka is a very specific place of pain and escaping pain and meeting new pain in another place. I mean, there's such insecurity. There's such there's that feeling, that the line in the show where Sachini says, I'll be happy just to get somewhere in the middle. And that's just heartbreaking of what we settle for. I've been memorizing James Baldwin's letter to his nephew in The Fire Next Time. And he says, he's talking about Black people. He says, you were not expected to aspire to excellence. You were expected to make peace with mediocrity. And that's kind of like, if we just survive in this country, that's a huge victory. It truly is. I mean, in my family, my cousins, my own family, the pain and the mental illness that people have suffered because of this, of what it is to be unknown and unseen. So this episode, and that's why I just and it's just so surprised me, like, why isn't Sri Lanka celebrating this episode in a huge way? Like, you're the first person that has requested an interview, and it's a sin. It's, as my mom would say, it's a bloody sin that this is not. And I don't know, it speaks to something deeper that I think that's within the episode of who we are and where is the community support, and where is, my uncle won the silver medal in the 48 Olympics, and he never felt celebrated by Ceylon. He felt like, oh, what, like they brag about him behind his back, but to his face, he, it's like, I don't know, because of our civil war, because of being colonized,
It's something again that's depicted really, really nicely in this episode as well, where no one's really behind Isuri for like the majority of the Kiss the Car competition, but towards the end, when the other contestants keep dropping out and she remains, until she becomes one of the final candidates, she doesn't really get support from even her own family. And that's something that's again very inherently Sri Lankan, where like you very correctly said, this episode should be celebrated over here in Sri Lanka. And until you brought this to my attention, even I didn't really know that this existed, which is such a shame. Well, our community should be sharing, celebrating this, because this is a really big win. And it's something that I don't know whether it's ingrained in our DNA right now, but it's something we can and we should get out of our systems and keep supporting people. And we got to support everybody, and we got to support especially our own people when they achieve something great. Not just when they achieve something great, but I guess whenever they set out to achieve something, like show that support.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this as well, and Pulse was the only other person that reached out to me, and I don't know, this I think Sri Lanka is also going through such an interesting moment in time right now as well, with money being the like base ground for the moment. And I think the one streaming platform that everybody goes to back home is Netflix. Everything else feels like an expense. And I was thinking about this but right before our episode dropped too, is the fact that like an Apple TV subscription, which for us is what, $7-8 a month, which is nothing when we think about it in terms of like US dollars, because we make more than that per hour. But when you convert that to Sri Lankan rupees, which a US dollar right now looks at like 380 rupees, that's a lot of money. And it feels to me like maybe there is a bit of a disconnect right there because of the financial gap as well, and the accessibility of people being able to receive this show. And like I had to share my subscription with my parents so they could watch it, and I didn't feel like asking my parents to drop that much more money to get a subscription themselves. So it's I think, and I don't know what the answer to this is. I think that might be, it's my speculation, is that might be a bit of a boundary issue where people are not able to receive this show. But yeah, absolutely right. More people need to talk about it, and this is one of the biggest moments in television for Sri Lankans, because we've never had this moment before. And there's something else that I also wanted to mention, was the fact that, what was it? Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, is that this story in itself does not represent the whole of Sri Lanka. Like, it represents a very specific demographic of Sri Lanka. It represents the Sinhala part of Sri Lanka. And that was something that I was acutely aware of once it was getting closer to the show being dropped, is the fact that this doesn't fully represent the whole of this island and the whole of what this island has endured and gone through. And that is something that Isuri as a person, came to terms with in terms of my moving from Sri Lanka to America too, is the fact that, I come from a decent amount of privilege. I come from a working class background where my parents have worked incredibly hard to be able to make my life very comfortable when I live at home. And that is something that I had to leave behind having moved to America. And that is, I think, also such a core element of this episode, is privilege, and what privilege looks like when you leave a home country and you move to a place where you then become a minority, and what shifting from a majority to a minority looks like And that is something that I think Bernie's character went through as well, and is something that passed on from him to Sachini. Which there were so many little elements in this episode, which I think if we've honed into those things, it could easily be a whole feature film. But the fact that we chose to focus on the father-daughter relationship in itself, I think was a more universal approach, as opposed to like all the nitty-gritty issues that Sri Lankans face, and immigrants face, from moving and leaving their home country to moving to a different place to chase a dream.
Yeah, I agree with what you said, and specifically also on the whole accessibility issue when it comes to subscriptions. Like, Sri Lanka has been going through quite a lot of trouble in the recent past, and pain has just become like another Tuesday, I guess, because everyone's been living constantly in that state, and it's kind of become normal, and the absence of that feels weird to so many people, I guess. And so many people use Netflix as a mode of escapism, but that's as much as they can probably afford to. But there is also the thing where, I think Ryan Reynolds recently mentioned that one of his favorite filming locations was in Hikkaduwa in Sri Lanka. Yeah.
What did he film there?
I think that was his very first movie. I can't remember the name, but so hear me out. We have videos going on social media where people have specifically dug this movie out and combined it with Ryan speaking on stage about this particular that particular segment of the interview. They've gone so far back into the archives, they've found it, merged, and it's going around social media. It's spreading around these days. So I don't necessarily think accessibility is much of an issue if you really, really want to support your own people too. If you would support.
Yeah, I mean, listen, even when social media gets blocked, Sri Lankans will find any which way possible to be able to get to social media. So I think we can figure it out. That's not an issue. But yeah, I don't know what that disconnect is. I've been trying to figure it out myself, and I don't know. There's been, like, I have a lot of friends who are actors in Sri Lanka, and they've had movies that just came out, and everybody's supporting, going out. There's lots of interviews happening and all that stuff, which I'm absolutely delighted, because Sri Lankan stories from the motherland are also very important. And then I'm like, there's this moment in history where we've actually kind of broken ground that is now just kind of going above everybody's heads. So I don't know what the
I kind of feel like another reason could also be the language. I mean, as much as Sinhalese is also spoken, or even Tamil is spoken in Tamil is not spoken in India, so it's mostly Sinhalese. But whenever you find Sri Lankans speaking in a language other than Sinhalese, there again is a bit of a distance from, I mean, I'm talking about the local audience. They don't necessarily embrace it as much as they probably should. But again, that's understandable.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe it's not just one particular reason. It's probably like a whole lot of it. You could probably sit down and try to unravel this for hours on end, but I think we'd arrive at a conclusion. But I would love to hear Naomi's thoughts on the matter as well, and I think she's back.
Oh, good.
Welcome back, Naomi. Can we hear Naomi? Hello? Oopsie. Okay. All right.
Maybe she didn't hear.
I wonder if I should call her and have her talk.
That's okay. So before Isuri so Isuri's time is kind of limited on this call, so I'm just gonna direct a couple more questions Isuri's way before we move on to everybody else. So,
Message, please.
Yep.
Tried. Sorry about that.
Right. That's okay. That's okay. Isuri, I gotta tell you, like, fantastic performance once again. Amazingly done. And from the very initial get-go up until the very ending, you wove a very intricate role filled with emotions into the whole dynamic of this movie. And at its core, putting aside everything else, it is a father-daughter storyline. And were there any instances, any examples besides real life that you probably spoke about with Keertana on how to tackle this particular role and approach and make your performance universally appealing, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I mean, I have a pretty good relationship with my father. There's nothing that's per se, except for the fact that we're now having a conversation where I'm trying to let go of my gay name. For those who understand will understand, and that's a whole other conversation I'm trying to have with my father. And that's like the most amount of friction that I've had with him, I think. But it wasn't necessarily diving into my own personal experiences to feel these emotions, but I mean, I think it really is a testament to the training that I've gotten throughout grad school, is to be able to fully give myself over to the character and what the character is going through and feeling. And it is. If it wasn't for my training, I don't think I could have done 7 takes of a panic attack in a tiny bathroom at 10 a.m. in the morning. So that I will give all props to this MFA program, which at Cale University. And I think a big part of it is also just being a nice person on set. I don't know. This is also my first experience of TV and film. I've never done TV and film before. And I've heard of all these horror stories about how film and TV sets are pretty cold. Nobody expresses a lot of emotions, versus theater where everybody's like kumbaya, everybody's brother and sister. And that wasn't my experience on Little America. I felt like I got along very well with the crew, and that was also a piece of advice that I got from another one of my friends who I had spoken to before I started working on Little America. He works in film and TV exclusively, so I asked him if there was anything that he could share, and he said, honestly, get a good night's sleep so that you can show up to work and just not be grumpy, and you can make this environment a good place for everybody to work at, because you set the tone. And that's what I tried to do. And I think I built good relationships with everybody in the crew. By the end of the shoot, I knew everybody's names. And I think that was something that was very important for me as a person, to walk onto that set with and leave with. And that in itself made it a comfortable environment for me to play. For me to not feel embarrassed about what was happening, for me to feel like I could become a complete mess if I needed to. And there was one take, which I'm really sad didn't make it into the edit, but I remember there was one take of the panic attack in the bathroom where I had truly, this was disgusting, but I had snot coming out of my nose. And Dennis's camera was right here. And I was like, please, God, please use this take, because it's so gross, but it's so, it's human. Everybody has snot coming out of their nose, But they didn't use it, unfortunately. But, and if I didn't have a reputation, if I didn't have a good relationship with Dennis, that would have been such an awkward moment. And all I could tell you is that this man traveled to Sri Lanka one time with his wife, and he loves to eat crustables. There's things that I could tell you about every single crew member that I learned throughout those 8 days working on set with them that was important to me, and is something that I learned on this job that I will carry forward. So I think truly just being a good person and just being somebody you can have, being someone who's fun so that everybody else can work with as well. This was, I think, the things that I took into this job.
May I say, Isuri is a rare talent, and it's just, I mean, in any, like, I why she hasn't been already like stolen from Yale, and she's brilliant. And what, like, the success of this episode, okay, you have this hoity-toity Yale student, right?
Oh, God.
Okay, who comes from Yale. She's an actress coming from, I know Yale students. I've worked with Yale students before. God bless them. But you know, it's this privileged institution, right? So you combine that with the fear of being in a new environment and being the lead in a show. Most of the time, that fear takes over, and the actor or actress would become very demanding, very like out of just like, I have to be good in this. I have to make sure I'm good in this. This is my big chance. This is thrown at me. I used to be that actor who was such an asshole because I was so scared, and I would go into these situations where I was given a chance, and then I was just so scared. It was all about me, and let me make my performance good. I don't care if anybody's happy in the rehearsal room. I'm doing my thing because I'm this artist. So what she's talking about is so rare and beautiful. She made this episode what it is because of what I witnessed this. She would come to set daily with such generosity and treating anybody the same. There's like no hierarchy of because that's the other thing. A young actress, who do I need to be nice to? Who do I, I was a little upset she didn't pay more attention to me because I'm this big star, right? But she could give a shit. She wanted to like fake sure. I mean that in the realest way. Is that it was
I don't know what you're talking about, because Isuri is like, don't talk to me. Don't talk to me. No, I'm just kidding. She's like, between takes when we were just sitting, and she was like with us, she didn't go off to her trailer, like in between takes, she was like, we were chatting a little bit, and she's very down to earth and she's awesome. So
yeah. She completely set the tone for
I
this.
mean, I know I said good things about the institution that I'm at. I will also say I think the thing that made this project that much more important to me was because Amber Alert. California people.
Something.
Not on the East Coast.
I think it's a weather flash flood.
Is that this show gave me everything that this school did not, in terms of like fully accepting me for the body that I'm in and the experiences that I bring into life and the experiences I walk through the world with. So this project was that much more important to me because I felt like I was finally able to put all of the things that I was learning in grad school to practice, which was something that I wasn't given up until then at school for me to practice. So it was boot camp. It really was boot camp. So it felt to me like I left school for 3 weeks to then go do film school and then to go back to school. So it wasn't just a job, but it was really like a learning experience where I learned from every single person on that. So I learned so much from Bernie. I learned so much from Thushari. I learned so much from Tinge, like literally just watching Tinge work too, where I was like, this is pre-revolutionary. Like a female director, like truly commanding this set was beautiful to watch. And also the nitty-gritties of Tinge being a woman of color, being the leader on this set, was something that was very interesting to watch and see how she commanded the space as well. So thank you for everybody's kind words, but I am the diva, you're right. I'm kidding.
One last thing before history goes. What's the most important thing that you think you'd take away from this particular production and hopefully apply on anything in the future?
Mm, mm. Oh my gosh, good question.
Put you in a tight spot there.
Yeah,
Clock's ticking.
yeah. It feels like we did this a lifetime ago at this point. Because that's something that we do as artists too, is we move from gig to gig to gig to gig. So now that I'm on like gig number 7 since then, I have to backtrack and remind myself of what happened a year ago. Okay. I think my answer right now might change tomorrow, but right now is that people's experiences on film and TV sets are so individualistic. Each person's experience is their own. Because up until I worked on this job, the myth that I had heard was that everybody's an asshole on set. Everybody's like out to do their own job. You have to go do your thing and then leave. But Little America, I think, truly spoiled me because that wasn't my experience. And this job showed me that you can do film and TV work where you care for each other. But also, you don't need to care too much about each other. You can just go to set, do your work, and leave. But it doesn't need to come from a place where your heart is ice cold. Like people are actually really nice if you are nice to them. Kindness and care is what I learned and is what I will take with me, I think.
I think that's an ideal answer because we need more of that out in the world.
We do.
Yeah.
Okay, my darlings, I have to leave to go do 500 other things, but it was so nice to share this space with everybody, and so nice to come back together after many months. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for
Have
coming
fun.
on board.
Nice to see you finally.
Likewise.
Are you sleeping well, darling?
Me? No, I'm actually not.
Why not?
No, because I'm graduating in 72 days.
Are you eating well?
Yes.
You're eating all the rubbish?
No, coconut water.
Yeah.
She'll be
There's
eating
not a
well in
sugar.
May when she comes to LA and has dosa
This is
at
true.
our house.
That was essential.
Yeah.
I get invited too, I hope, Keertana.
Yes, of course.
100%. All right, everybody. Have a great day.
You too. Have fun.
Thank you. Bye.
Hopefully, Naomi will join us.
I think she's not. I think she's gone
not?
now.
Okay.
She said she
That's
had a
okay.
busy day.
That's all right. Honestly, I watched this episode like a month, I think a little over a month ago, and I had to refresh it earlier today because it's been a while. But when I went, I watched this for the second time today. And it's very rare that you rewatch something and experience the same emotions that you did the first time. And I don't know whether it was because I was watching something that inherently felt so close to home, so close to heart. But that's what I felt, and I think Bernie can relate to this too. When you said you can't watch this without sobbing, and therein I guess lies the whole magic of storytelling, and not just stories that we've seen one particular ethnic group of actors play the same role over and over again, but when you have people from different cultures, different countries coming together to tell a universal story mixed with their own culture, which Little America has been doing for 2 seasons now. Keertana, am I right? For 2 seasons now.
Yeah.
It's something truly, for lack of a better word, epic in all the right sense of the word. But Keertana, could you shed some light on when it comes to casting in particular, what do you look out for? Because with a show like this, it's very specific. It's not just like, oh, you can cast, you have one particular type of one particular role where you can fit in like a multitude of actors. It's very specific. So what's that process like, not just for the third episode in this second season, but all throughout? Because you worked on bigger productions as well. Talk to me about the nuances with something like this, please.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, I think it's more than most other projects I've ever worked on, you know, and I've been in casting for about 10 years now. So I've had my fair share of very different opportunity, very different like projects that I've gotten to work on. But more so than most of those, you know, obviously authenticity is key here. So that does definitely allow us the opportunity to, it's tricky, but it's also, it offers the opportunity to really be able to hire, um, you know, potentially people that may not be seen in, or may not be considered in other roles, which is unfortunate because everyone should be considered for everything. But on top of that, you know, it's not just about, okay, who can speak what language and who can do this, but it's also, it's tricky because it's also just the same stuff you're looking for in casting anything, right? I mean, it has to feel like someone who inherently understands the character. It has to be somebody that, um, you know, casting is subjective, so it has to be someone that the whole team responds to. Because, you know, what people don't always think about or realize is that, like, obviously we're not making the final decisions. You know, the producers and the directors are making the final decisions. And as someone who also produces, like, you know, I always have to kind of explain that to people when we're talking about casting. It's like the buck doesn't stop with us. Our job is to shepherd across the people that we really think fit the best and that we fight for and champion, for the team to ultimately make their decision. So, you know, that makes the job very tricky because you're looking for things that are subjective, inherent qualities of characters. And there are a lot of people who could say, like, well, I fit this, this, and this, but again, it's subjective. So it feels like a weird thing to say. And once you start doing the job, you kind of realize it's true. But you kind of know it when you see it. Really, that's a lot of our job. You know it when you see it. So you can have these certain elements that you know you need, like language, etc. But even within that, at the end of the day, it's you know it when you see it. Like for us, it was like Thushari's so warm. She fits that role so well. With Isuri, like, we knew how close she felt to, you know, certain elements of this, not only because she said it in the room and, you know, on the Zoom room, but you can just see it in her performance. You can see it when she was auditioning with a reader in our office, you know, like, there are inherent qualities that you just kind of have to know it when you see it, you know. It just, I wish there was a better way and a more articulate way that I could explain that. But, aside from all the things about authenticity, that really is what it comes down to at the end of the day.
Yeah, that makes sense, because sometimes you just, like you said, you know it when you see it, and it's an industry where you kind of go with what you're playing with people's feelings, and you'll feel it as well, I guess, during the casting process too.
Yeah, and that's why I always say, like, casting is really hard because it's so subjective. There's a lot of, like, feelings involved. There's a lot of emotions involved, and so, you know, the best casting professionals are the ones who understand that, and the ones who know that, like, we're here to champion the right actors, like the right actors for whatever the part is. And the right actor could mean anything because it's subjective, but our job is to champion people. So, yeah, it's that's what makes it hard, is all the emotion involved. It really.
Once again, thank you so much for championing the right people for this particular project, because that was a job magnificently done.
Thank you. Made it easy. These guys made it easy.
Yeah.
Before we close up, I wanna ask our three remaining actors, what has this project, what has this episode meant to you, and what would you guys personally take forward moving into different other roles? Thushari, do you want to go?
Okay, for me, it's because I faced a lot of barriers to entry when I was starting out. That and then I, with auditioning and stuff like that, Keertana made it so like comfortable, and I love that because even going through Zoom, so this gave me more confidence, I think, and also seeing the Sri Lankan storyline, and previously I might have been like a little hesitant, even though I identify as Sri Lankan. I know like we could play any role potentially, but the other side, the production might not always see it, but sometimes the casting, might be like a bridge in between as well. So from this show, I learned that I have to be a little bit more confident in my like just being a performer and just trust the process, and also to be I've been persistent, but also it's okay to maybe ask like the production or casting, and to ask about choices, and you might know something a little better than someone else, so you have to kind of fight for your take, like when we were doing one of the eating scenes, and maybe someone said, oh no, why are you doing it this way, but then you have to stand up for your belief of your choices. So what I'll carry on is just stand. If you think your choice as a character is correct, like fight for it, and know what to fight for, and know what not to fight for, and just be. And and mainly like the confidence, and just now it's a time where like in America especially, they're opening up more to like other cultures and the stories of that, and just keep an eye out and just submit. And unless like someone sees me and they say, oh, that's the ultimate dream for actors, like they see you and they're like, oh, we're going to cast and no auditions, but then of course then cast, when the casting could, yeah, and I feel that this gives more opportunities to other performers in our community who are up and coming. So for those, I want to say, just be persistent. And people have told me, change your name. Like, but I always been Thushari Jayasekara, and I had never changed my name to fit. And I know that might have not gotten me into many rooms, but just do feel what is right. If you feel you want to, change your name, do so. But just be who you are, and that's what's important. And I am glad for Little America and the people that I got to meet. Okay. Thank you.
Anu, do you want to go
Anuradha?
next?
I am really grateful every day that I get to go on set and do this, and I never take it for granted. And I only hope that I can keep doing it. And every day I feel so lucky when I'm there, and I always try to take it in and just enjoy the ride. Feels great.
Anything in particular that you take moving forwards into different other productions, different other roles?
Yeah, I'm auditioning and submitting, and right now I don't have anything happening, but I am applying for this stuff. So.
Wishing you all the best, man.
Yeah, thank you.
And to close it off with, Bernie, want to do the honors?
I'm gonna take away something about community, something about like I've almost not even identified as a Sri Lankan American actor, because I've played every ethnicity, and I continue to play every ethnicity, and I mean, just the whole thing, and as far as casting goes, and authenticity, and you know, I was blacklisted. I don't know if you know this, Keertana, but I was blacklisted by the Latino community for a while because back in the 90s, I used to get a lot of Latino roles. And there was a moment when they said, oh, we have to protect our, you know, they were really reacting against white people getting cast as Latino, but they had to include me. So they made a list of non-Latinos who were getting a lot of work. And I was on that list. And so I was a casualty of that. Like all my Latino friends would say, like, "Oh, we're so sorry about this, Bernie, because you know you're one of us." But you know, so what I take away from this is the need, and you know, and this is to you too, Akash. Is how do we? I want to just more investigate. How do we bridge the gap? How do we get production flowing between Sri Lanka and America, and how can I help that? That's the biggest thing that I take away from this. And how do I, as someone who's been around for a while, how do I step into those sort of elder shoes and facilitate that? And then that's like why I wanted Anu here, is to set so that because we do, to just that and like that this can be something that we do, that we don't have to just be engineers and doctors and we can express these things, and that there's a chance, you know, that, you know, it's that back to that thing, that James Baldwin quote, is that we can aspire to excellence and not mediocrity. And it's a hard one though. Like it's daily. Like that's what we were celebrating, South Asian excellence last night, and I thought, this is nice. This is really nice, but will this translate to work? Like I'm currently, I said this to Keertana last night. I'm currently at this situation, moment in my life. It's like I have a sense I'm never going to work again, because we all as actors always go through this, and I'm still going through that. Like, it's been slow. Will I ever work again? Or
which of course you will, but I get it. Of course you will, but
right. And if I don't, this little America, well, as they say, as Jewish people say, Dayenu. This is enough. If nothing else, Dayenu.
I'm pretty sure there's a whole lot more that you gotta offer, and very damn sure that we'll be seeing a lot more of you on screen.
Yes.
There's no way we won't. And I think also, like, it's important to say too, like, I think here's how I look at it. I think your ethnicity should not be, your nationality, your culture should not be what limits you from getting parts. I am all about authenticity, right? Like I am all about, like, if it is important to the root and the structure of the story as a whole, that if the culture is important, then that culture should be represented in those roles. But that being said, if a part is just written as John or whatever, I'm just using a name, right? And it's not inherently part of the story. It's not inherently, it's not one of those things where, you know, this needs to be a X, Y, and Z actor because that is what the story calls for and needs. Then why can't anyone play anything? Like, the default always, unfortunately, ends up being white, and that's where things need to change. And so that, to me, is where hopefully, like, this event that Bernie and I were able to go to last night, you know, one of the things that was said, like, oh, let's make some deals today. Like, let's all hang out and celebrate each other, but let's make some deals. There is some truth to that, right? If we don't support each other, then who does? If BIPOC people cannot support each other, then who else is going to? If South Asian people cannot support each other, then who else is going to? So, like, we have to make our own, I was going to say a bad word there, but I edited myself. We have to make our own work in a lot of ways. And then we have to fight for each other when we have seats at the table to bring more seats into that table. And that comes from top down. That is at every level, every crew position, every cast position, whatever. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it is so much, I'm finding that it's the younger people who are leading the way in this. And it's like, I'm learning from them, like Janina Gavankar, and like the people that, you know, I work with on Big Sky, and that they're coming together and making, you know, rooms and spaces that we can come together. And it was so lovely being there last night. It's like I was a last minute decision to go, and I'm so glad I went.
And as a young actor trying to come into it, I mean, I'm so grateful for Bernie, because sometimes you don't know what to do when you come in. You just take your classes, you do this, you do that, but then you just hit a wall and go this direction, go that direction. What do? Sometimes people have no idea. But that's why I'm so grateful for meeting Bernie at that show, and because he's been around and he knows how it works.
I think
It's-
we need
it's
more
such a
people like
privilege,
that
yeah.
who lead without a title. It's amazing
oh my
what
God.
you've done, and thank you for bringing us all here together. And if anything, just to wrap it up, I think like if you look 5 years back and where we were as communities and where we are at right now, also in terms of representation, if something has changed, if it's gotten at least a little better, I think we can be glad or rest a little bit reassured that things will also be better in the future. But at the same time, we got to work towards it. And like Keertana very rightly said, if we can't support our own, what's the point? And I'm really, really hoping that I get to see more of you guys on screen, because I felt it right here watching this episode. So thank you all for making this happen. And to whoever had the brilliant idea of making Bernie dance, hats off.
Yes, that was brilliant.
Thank you, Akash. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
holding this.
Akash. Thank you.
Thank
Becky.
you
Bohumi
so much.
Stuti Akash
Nice
and
to see you,
Junkyard
Keertana.
team.
I never met you before. Thushari, see
Thank
you.
you all. Thank you all for joining the call. And till
Miss
next time,
Tuti.
he still got it.
Hi, Bowen.
Till next time, this is Junkyard Theory, folks.
Bye.